The year I hit rock bottom, I sold myself to the Ashworth family. The price was having a child for their alpha, Adrian, a man who couldn't mark an omega, to use as a pawn in their inheritance battle. The problem was, Adrian despised betas. So, during his rut, I swallowed my shame and climbed into his bed. Delirious, the alpha's face flushed red as he cursed me. You're insane. Even if you have my child, I'll never acknowledge them. Eventually, I completed my task. But then an omega with 100% compatibility with Adrian appeared. The Ashworths went back on their word. I was tossed aside, a useless pawn. The next time I heard my name, it was at Adrian's engagement party. The refined alpha's brow furrowed, a flicker of disgust in his eyes. That shameless beta, he said. I wish he'd just stay away from me. I froze, hiding the pregnancy test results in my hand. I gave him his wish. I didn't keep the child. I was rushing from my part-time job to the Ashworth Manor when a light snow began to fall. Icy flakes landed on my bare neck, sending a chill through me. The sky was growing dark. I picked up my pace and finally made it to the manor just before nightfall. I steeled myself. I carefully pushed open the locked bedroom door, but before I could even peek my head inside, crack! A glass cup grazed my pant leg, shattered against the door, and fell to the floor. Splintered glass sliced my ankle. A sharp, tiny sting. Get out. A raw, deep voice came from the large bed in the room. It sounded like the owner of that voice was in immense pain. In the darkness, I forced myself to stay calm, fumbling along the wall for the switch and turning on the light. Under the dim, yellow glow, a large lump was huddled under the covers. The alpha, usually so refined and cool, was a wreck. The corners of his eyes were red, and all his proud composure was gone. He looked pathetic and miserable. I deliberately avoided looking at the dark expression on Adrian's face. I walked to the bedside on my own and glanced at the container of chicken and rice on the floor, still mostly untouched. I swallowed hard and sighed. Still not eating? You haven't eaten in 4 days, and you're in the middle of your rut. Your body can't take this. Before I could finish, I heard the whoosh of something flying past my ear. He had violently knocked the food over, and rice splattered everywhere. Even with his hands and feet bound, an alpha in his rut was shockingly strong. The iron chains on his ankles scraped together with a piercing shriek as he struggled. Stop pretending to be a saint. I paused, wiped a grain of rice off my cheek, and said nothing. The alpha's bloodshot eyes scanned me from head to toe, as if he wanted to devour me whole. What the hell did the Ashworths promise you? All this ass-kissing. Leo, don't you get tired of it? When I didn't answer, Adrian turned his head and sneered. A worthless beta like you only knows how to get ahead with scummy tactics like this. His yelling made my ears ring for a few seconds. I shook my head to clear it. After a moment, I bent down to start cleaning up the sheets he had soiled. This was the 4th day of Adrian's rut. The books all say an alpha's rut usually lasts about 7 days. A few days ago, following the Ashworth's instructions, I stripped naked and climbed into his bed. It was useless. The willpower of an S-class alpha is astonishingly firm. Not only would he not let me near him, but when I tried to touch his wrist, he nearly crushed it. But without suppressants, I knew he couldn't hold out for long. Adrian was born with a rare pheromone disorder, giving him 0% compatibility with every single omega in the Empire. He couldn't use bonding with an omega to get through his rut, nor could he mark one. Without suppressants, a rut was like a slow, chronic suicide. But Adrian needed the Ashworth family's support. So the Ashworths found me, an ordinary beta who wouldn't get a second glance in a crowd. All I had to do was give Adrian a child to serve as a bargaining chip for his inheritance. The family promised me $100,000 as payment. I thought of my little brother, still in a hospital bed. I pressed my lips together. I put the dirty sheets in the washing machine. I picked up the chicken leg he'd knocked on the floor and rinsed it under the tap. Then I tossed it into the expired, discontinued cup of instant noodles I'd brought back from the convenience store and finished my meal for the day, picking food off the floor to eat. Leo, have you no shame? Maybe the worst of the pain had passed. On the bed, A slightly more lucid Adrian was staring at me, a mocking smile on his lips. I opened my mouth, then thought better of it and swallowed my words. After I moved into the manor with the family's permission, all the nearby staff had been dismissed. Besides, the Ashworths hadn't expected Adrian to be this stubborn. The week's worth of food they had prepared was all gone. The Alpha had destroyed it. Who would have thought that, in this luxurious mansion, the refrigerator was now completely empty, without so much as a single pack of dried noodles. If I didn't sneak out to work part-time while he was passed out during the day, I was afraid I wouldn't survive what was coming. At that thought, my ears grew hot. I lowered my head, feeling guilty. Just be good and don't move around. After cleaning everything up, I quietly took off my shirt and slowly approached the man on the bed. The moonlight from the window fell on my bony shoulders. I didn't notice the Alpha's gaze on me growing deeper and darker. When I got off the man, I felt like the lower half of my body wasn't even mine anymore. Cold sweat dripped from my forehead. But at least it was over. Frowning, I picked up the sugared eggs I had cooked earlier and ate 3 in one go. Is that it? I shivered, my voice a hoarse, tearful whisper as I turned back. What? The man who had just been gripping my waist with a death grip fell silent when he saw the eggs in my hand. You eat more than a pig. I didn't know how to respond, a look of confusion in my eyes. As far as I knew, sugared eggs were a treat only my sick brother was allowed to have. Adrian's face was grim as he forced a few words through his throat, the gritted teeth tone pulling me from my thoughts. I said, I'm not done. If it weren't for the look of pure mortification on his face, I would have thought he was deliberately trying to get revenge on me. Wasn't that enough? I asked weakly, my body trembling, my eyes wide with disbelief that seemed to ignite his anger. Leo, have you ever been to a health class? All Alphas are like this during their rut. You were so slow, fumbling around for ages. Adrian sneered, his face contorting in pain as the veins on his arms bulged. If you don't want me to suffocate, then hurry up and untie me. I hesitated for a moment, afraid I might actually injure the Ashworth family's young master. My soft heart won out, and I untied him. The next second, the freed Alpha lunged at me. Before I could even make a sound, the violent force of his movements made tears stream from my eyes. Just take it. Adrian's voice was low and raspy, cold and devoid of any warmth. Throughout this agonizing ordeal, I cried silently. When I woke up again, I was on the sofa. The iron chain on my ankle told me that this time, our roles had been reversed. You're awake? Faster than I thought. From a corner of the room, Adrian's sinister voice sounded like a hissing snake. Tell me, who are you really? Everything was dark. I licked my dry, cracked lips, feeling the pain all over my body, and answered quietly, the Ashworth family sent me. For what purpose? The purpose is for me to have your child. The man's emotionless voice cut in at the right moment. Continue. I licked my lips again, looked at my clothes, which were torn to shreds on the floor, and said in a frightened voice, they promised to pay me $100,000. After I spoke, a long, oppressive silence filled the room. Seeing a flicker of surprise on the Alpha's handsome face, I lowered my head and mustered my courage. I know you don't like me, but if you just cooperate a little, we can get out of here soon. The Ashworths have guards at the main gate. As long as I don't, they won't let you out. I didn't know if my words would have any effect. I only knew that Adrian, on the sofa in the distance, was silent. After a long while, he looked up at the dark, oppressive sky outside the window. From that day on, maybe because he realized he couldn't get any useful information from me, Adrian stopped his taunts and sarcasm. But I still slept on the living room sofa, only allowed into the Alpha's room when he needed me, becoming his human suppressant. Once again, I saw the marks on my body in the mirror. I chose my words carefully and voiced my concerns to the culprit. Adrian, I think that's enough. The doctor said it shouldn't be too frequent. The Alpha paused at my words, slicking his wet hair back to reveal his untamed brow and eyes. What, regretting it now? A beta, besides that pathetic fertility, what other use do you have? Leo, Have you ever wondered why the Ashworth family chose you? Adrian scoffed, his mocking gaze dismantling my feigned composure piece by piece. Just as I was frozen stiff, unable to move, the grating sound of a metal door scraping against the floor came from behind me. A voice shouted, "Bro, I'm here to save you." The intruder had a head of wild, bright red hair. Even though the front door was wide open, he still chose to climb in through the window. Adrian was the first to react. His brow twitched as he calmly stepped in front of me, his tone unreadable. "How did you get in?" Don't worry about that. Aren't you surprised to see me?" the stranger said, spreading his arms dramatically. His flamboyant, wild attitude was impossible to figure out. I knew this person was also an alpha. Sure enough, just as I was trying to sneak upstairs to find a room to hide in, he suddenly poked his head out and looked at me with a grin. "Adrian, is this the one the Ashworths sent over?" "Yeah." Adrian didn't even glance at me. At his words, the strange alpha scrutinized me for a few moments. Finding no amusement in my timid expression, he clicked his tongue and surveyed the house with his hands on his hips. "Looks like those old geezers at the Ashworth estate are really running out of options, sending trash like this to the table. And you, Adrian, seriously. This place reeks of your pheromones. It's making me sick. Ignore him. Ryan, did you take care of the guards outside?" "Yep. The car's right at the door." So his name was Ryan. Listening to their casual conversation, I suddenly felt a sense of unease. Was he here to rescue Adrian? But if Adrian left, how would I complete my mission? My brother was still lying in a hospital bed, waiting for the money for his life-saving surgery. For the first time in my life, I summoned the courage to call out the man's name. "No, Adrian, you can't leave." Unsurprisingly, I was met with their laughter. "Whoa, Adrian, he actually dared to tell you not to go." Adrian paused, quickly packing his things without looking up. I thought of the $100,000 I still hadn't received and suddenly bolted for the door, intending to shout for help to stop them. But the moment I moved, the alpha, as if anticipating my move, grabbed my wrist with a crushing grip. I was thrown hard onto the sofa. My chin was seized, forcing me to meet the man's dark, cold eyes. Adrian disgustedly flung away the hand that had touched me. "TSK. Such a good little dog for the Ashworth family. What do you think they'll do to you after I'm gone? A beta like you, what makes you think you'll be allowed to have my child? Leo, you're just a pawn, too." He patted my cheek, a cold smile curling on his lips. I lay stunned on the sofa, my face deathly pale, with no strength left to call for help. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ryan muttering over a piece of paper in his hand. "Adrian, this guy really did sign a contract with those old men. Whoa, he doesn't know this kind of contract is worthless, does he?" As Ryan spoke, he shot me a gloating look. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. I watched him open the window and fling the papers in his hand into the air. The white sheets fluttered everywhere before landing in the swimming pool, sinking to the bottom of the glittering water. "No!" I lunged forward, reaching out blindly, trying to save them. Then I scrambled downstairs like a madman and jumped into the pool, trying to fish the papers from the bottom. But I couldn't swim. The water flooding my lungs made me choke, tears and snot streaming down my face. What the hell, is he brain damaged or something? Ryan stared, dumbfounded, then burst out laughing at the ridiculous sight of me choking on water. "It's only $100,000. Hasn't he figured out he's been scammed yet?" Adrian gave me a complicated look but said nothing. I was the only one flailing in the pool like a clown. The wind blew, and my wet clothes clung to my body, chilling me to the bone. Finally, Adrian put a stop to the farce. He walked to the edge of the pool and crouched down, tossing a life buoy at me. "Idiot, get out yourself. I'll take you with me." A flicker of light appeared in my desolate eyes. I desperately clung to the floating buoy, forcing a few barely audible words from my raw throat. "Really?" Through the messy, wet hair plastered to my forehead, I looked up at the clean, neat man on the edge of the pool. Adrian's brow twitched, and he gave a chilling smile. "Yeah." After that, Adrian locked me in a strange rental apartment. My only food was what the Alpha brought back during his hurried visits. Adrian was always busy. I never saw him during the day, and even his friend Ryan never showed up again. I had a feeling they were plotting something big, something I wasn't allowed to know. "When can you let me out?" I asked weakly from my corner. Adrian, who was fiddling with a communicator at the desk, looked up. His gaze lingered on my face, which had grown thinner. "What?" He looked away and clicked his tongue. "Can't stand it already? What did you do to me back then?" I lowered my head and looked at the worn red string on my ankle, twisting it. "Can I at least make a phone call? We've been out for so long, and I haven't told my mom I'm okay." A black box was tossed onto the bed. I picked it up excitedly and saw it was a satellite phone. My fingers expertly dialed a familiar number. I clutched the phone, glanced at the cold-faced Adrian, and turned away. My anxious heart leaped into my throat when I heard a familiar voice on the other end. A hesitant, youthful voice spoke. "Bro?" Before the joyful word could escape my lips, the phone was snatched away on the other end, and my mother's high-pitched, excited voice rang out. "Leo? Is that Leo? You little bastard, you've gotten too big for your britches. Haven't you? Why did it take you so long to call?" I just stood there holding the phone. A torrent of accusations rained down on me. "Let me ask you, why hasn't the money from the Ashworths come through? Didn't you say you'd have it in a week? Sam is still waiting. The doctor said we need to get the money for the surgery soon." "Your brother can't wait." Sharon gasped for breath, her voice vicious. "I swear you don't even care about your brother. I should never have picked you up. I should have let you die in that trash can." The smile on my lips vanished. The phone's faint glow made my face look unnaturally pale. "Mom, don't be angry." I pressed my lips together. "It'll be soon. As soon as I get the money, I'll send it over." The angry female voice on the other end paused for a second. I heard my brother trying to argue, but the next second, my mother ruthlessly hung up the phone. Just before she did, I caught her last words. "Ungrateful brat." At the desk, Adrian shot me an impassive glance. I turned my back to him and secretly wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. "I'm an orphan. My birth parents threw me in a dumpster right after I was born. Sharon, my mom, found me while she was collecting empty bottles from the trash. If it weren't for her, I probably would have died in that cold winter. I also have a younger brother, Sam. He was Sharon's son with a drunk, but the drunk had bad luck. Not long after my brother was born, he fell into a river and drowned. From then on, Sharon raised the two of us by herself. On my 18th birthday, when I presented, I became a beta. But Sam wasn't so lucky. For some reason, his glands developed abnormally, and his presentation failed. He was supposed to be an omega but became a beta instead. Refusing to accept fate, my mother dragged Sam to every major hospital. But the exorbitant surgery fees were far beyond their reach. My mother cried every day, and my brother grew visibly thinner. I never understood why my mother couldn't accept that my brother was a beta. But when she heard about Adrian's situation from a friend who used to work for the Ashworths, I saw the hesitant look on her face and didn't say a word. I took the job. After hanging up, I took a moment to compose myself, picking at a hangnail as I cautiously looked up at the man who was the key to my mission. Before I could even formulate a plan, the Alpha, as if sensing my thoughts, let out a cold snort. "Don't even think about it." Adrian slammed the screwdriver in his hand into a metal box. His profile was sharp and defined, his eyelashes slightly lowered, making him look incredibly detached. "A plain beta like you, if it weren't for the Ashworths, I would never have given you a second glance in my entire life. Your sob story has nothing to do with me. I'm not some animal in heat." The disdain in his words was palpable. I froze, looking at the Alpha's bright red earlobes, and uncomfortably turned my head away. Fortunately, 2 weeks later, Adrian's rut arrived right on schedule. He had handcuffed me to a corner of the sofa in advance. Within my reach, he had placed enough water and food to last through the rut. After doing all this, Adrian walked to the nightstand. His large, well-defined hands violently tore open a suppressant package and took out the needle. Then, He raised his hand and mercilessly injected it into his own glands. I watched silently, my gaze falling on the scattered suppressant boxes on the floor. I pulled out a piece of wire I had hidden in the corner and, without hesitation, picked the lock on my cuffs. Adrian didn't know. I was never a good student, but picking locks with a wire was child's play for me. The light from a street lamp shone through a corner of the window. I slowly took off my clothes and walked toward the bed. The delirious Alpha saw what I was doing, and his face suddenly turned red as he cursed, "Leo, are you insane?" Adrian froze, awkwardly trying to evade my touch. "How long are you going to let them fool you? Even if you have my child, the Ashworths will never acknowledge them, and I won't love them either." I closed my eyes, mimicking his earlier actions, and gently pecked his feverish lips. A barely audible apology escaped with my breath. I'm sorry, but I have no other choice." Although Adrian had cut me off from the outside world, I knew the Ashworth family was still looking for us. Every time Adrian returned to the apartment, he had cuts and bruises of all sizes. On bad days, there was even the faint smell of blood on him. Now, looking at the peaceful face of the sleeping Alpha beside me, I unconsciously touched the glands on the back of my neck. I didn't need a mirror to know that there probably wasn't a single patch of smooth skin back there. Last night, Adrian had ground against it over and over, as if he wanted to swallow me whole. Luckily, it was dark, so Adrian didn't notice anything strange about my glands. At the beginning, to ensure things went smoothly, the Ashworths had implanted a tracker in my glands. A tiny chip that left a hidden scar on the back of my neck. If I pressed the switch, the tracker would send out our real-time location. When that happened, Adrian's position would undoubtedly be exposed. NGH, a pained groan from beside me brought me back to my senses. The restless Alpha was frowning, his forehead covered in a fine sheen of sweat, his breathing rapid and unstable. He seemed to be trapped in a deep nightmare. I tentatively reached out my hand. The next second, he gripped both of my hands tightly, making it impossible to break free. A warm pressure came from his fingertips. I laced my fingers with his, feeling my heart begin to quietly pound. I didn't know if what I was doing was right, but I knew that if I pressed the switch, it would all be over. Adrian would return to his world, a world I could never touch. Just as I was agonizing over my choice, a group of unknown people found us first. The door was violently broken down, and unseen bullets grazed the walls and pierced the wooden floor. Damn it! Adrian pulled me tightly into his arms, his bloodshot eyes watching the intruders outside. I grabbed the collar of his shirt and said anxiously, "Adrian, you have to go. I'll distract them." The Alpha, who had been leaning against the wall, glanced at my face, a flicker of something in his eyes. "You talk too much. Stay hidden." What kind of Alpha would I be if I let a beta shield me? A large hand forcibly pushed my head into his chest. I felt the powerful beat of his heart against me. Adrenaline surged through my veins in the tense environment, my heart pounding so fast it felt like it would burst from my chest. But we still couldn't escape. Before help arrived, Adrian took a bullet to the abdomen protecting me. I watched as the man collapsed in front of me, blood gushing from the wound, staining his white shirt, my vision filled with a blinding sea of red. No! When we arrived at the hospital, an imposing Ryan was followed by a large team of doctors. I tried to help but was stopped by Ryan's bodyguards. One of the doctors, a handsome man with his hands in his pockets, studied me carefully for a moment. But I was oblivious. I just watched as the medical staff methodically placed the severely injured, unconscious Adrian onto a stretcher, and they soon disappeared behind the red light of the operating room. The nauseating smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. I leaned against the cold wall, trying to slow my frantic breathing. As I was wiping the bloodstains from my cheek, a familiar voice sounded in my ear. "You're the one who leaked our location, weren't you?" In the corner, Ryan was dialing a number on his phone, the mockery in his voice unmistakable. "What?" I froze on the spot, a chill running down my spine. "Ha! Still playing dumb." Ryan put the connected phone to his ear, his eyebrows raised in a mocking sneer, and he hissed, still pretending. That tracker in your glands, I told Adrian about it a long time ago. Are you daring to say you didn't leak it? Those people were after his life. If he wasn't protecting you, would he have gotten hurt? A money-grubbing, opportunistic little snake like you, and to think Adrian still had me arrange the money for your brother's surgery. What an ungrateful bastard. I was stunned. Before I could react, 2 tall bodyguards behind me suddenly grabbed my arms and dragged me out of the hospital. You got your money, now get lost. Inside the glass doors, Ryan gave me an inscrutable look. Then he turned and walked away without a second thought, as if I were something dirty. In a daze, I followed my memory back to my old home, only to be told by a neighbor that they had moved out a long time ago. Moved out? I repeated the words, then dragged my aching stomach to my brother's hospital. Are you asking about the patient in bed 3? Oh, he had his surgery a week ago. I heard his mother took him abroad. The nurse flipped through the hospital records, her brow furrowing and then smoothing out. You must be Sam's brother, right? Don't worry, your brother's glands are recovering very well. We were all surprised. He had absolutely no rejection of the transplanted gland. I licked my dry lips, quickly latching onto the keywords. Gland transplant? My brother's presentation was abnormal. Why would he need a gland transplant? That's right. The nurse looked at me, confused. You didn't know? Sam was originally a beta. Your mother came to our hospital and provided an omega's gland specifically for his transplant surgery. I swallowed hard, trying to grasp at something intangible. The pain in my stomach was getting worse, as if something was struggling inside. I dug my nails into my palm, but before I could ask my question, the nurse's worried face spun in my vision. The whole world was spinning, getting blurrier and blurrier until I lost consciousness completely. Help! This gentleman has fainted. When I woke up again, the first thing I saw was the pure white ceiling of the hospital. I turned my head to look at the 4 in my right hand and struggled to sit up. Just then, the nurse who had helped me earlier pushed the door open. You're awake? How are you feeling? You're a beta, so you need to be extra careful during your pregnancy. The nurse replaced the empty 4 bag with a new one, not noticing my dazed and huanghu expression. There's a landline on the nightstand. You can use it if you want to call your partner. Remember to press the call button if you need anything. After giving her instructions, she quietly left the room. The room was suddenly so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I slowly picked up the phone and dialed my mother's number over and over. We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again. Tears dripped onto the clean sheets, creating a small, dark patch. I buried my head in my arms and hugged myself tightly, my shoulders shaking silently as I held back my sobs. The year I presented at 18, I was hospitalized once. When I woke up, my mother gently stroked my face, a smile on her face that I had never seen before. I always thought I was a beta, but the doctor's words told me I might be a disabled omega whose gland had been taken. A thought struck me. I forced myself to calm down and, with trembling hands, called the Ashworth family. Luckily, they answered. I need to speak to Adrian. I have something to tell him. I wanted to tell him I didn't betray him. The person on the other end of the line sneered. Dream on. Adrian is probably busy with his omega right now. He wouldn't have time for you. I'd advise you not to make trouble for yourself. The Ashworth family has found an omega with 100% compatibility with Adrian. Whether you're pregnant with his child or not, you're not needed anymore. The money has been transferred to your account. Don't contact this number again. Beep, beep, beep. A 100% compatible omega? I stared blankly as I put down the receiver. My left hand rested on my lower abdomen, and I felt a wave of confusion. What am I supposed to do now? And what about my child? A month later, news of the marriage between Adrian Ashworth, the eldest son of the Ashworth family, and the youngest son of the Smith family spread across the galaxy. They were said to be the first couple with 100% compatibility. To witness this union, anyone was invited to the engagement party. I still remember it was a particularly beautiful day. The incessant, damp rain of the past few days had finally cleared up. I blended into the crowd, listening to the chatter around me. Hey, I thought the Smith family's son just returned to the country not long ago. How did he get involved with Adrian Ashworth? Someone gossiped, holding a glass of champagne. I pricked up my ears, a sudden, unbearable ache in my chest. You don't know that? The person was surprised, nudging their friend's elbow with a conspiratorial wink. The Ashworth heir being attacked was all over the news a while ago. I heard that the Smith heir happened to be Adrian's attending physician at the time. Phenomenal attraction. They probably hooked up in the hospital. Whoa, that's juicy. Getting the reaction he wanted, the person chuckled. Then he saw something and quickly lowered his voice. Okay, stop talking. They're coming out. I paused, took a half step back to make sure I was completely inconspicuous in the crowd, and then dared to let my gaze silently settle on the newcomer. Adrian, in a sharp suit, stood tall among the guests. Beside him was an Omega in a pure white suit. The crowd erupted in cheers and congratulations. Adrian's eyelids were slightly lowered, a polite smile on his flawless face. When his unignorable gaze swept in my direction, I quickly lowered my head, my hands nervously tugging at the hem of my shirt, trying to hide my slightly protruding belly. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, I heard my own name. Adrian, I heard your family found a beta for you. Where is he? Don't tell me you've hidden him away. Our dear Evan is very possessive, you know. Can't stand even a speck of dust in his eye. A young woman joked with Evan, but her eyes were on the handsome young alpha. I stood on my tiptoes, biting my lip, a sense of tension and anticipation I hadn't even realized I was feeling. In a pocket of hushed silence, I saw Adrian frown, a flash of disgust in his eyes. That shameless beta. I wish he'd just stay away from me. He gave a lazy smile. Otherwise, I don't have that many lives to spare for his betrayals. Hearing Adrian's words, I froze, my limbs going numb. The young masters and ladies around them burst into loud, supportive laughter, seemingly amused by the refined alpha's crude language. Ha 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 ha. He's right. Shameless. Evan, who had been looking a bit impatient, visibly paused when he saw the look on the man's face. He took a step forward and gracefully linked his arm with Adrian's. All right, it's my engagement party, and you all just have to make trouble for me. Let's not talk about irrelevant people and things. The hecklers quickly apologized, but the apology was superficial, hiding a subtle mockery and a desire to watch the drama unfold. I lowered my eyes, looking at the pregnancy report folded into a small square in my hand. I knew that without a partner's consent, Federation law wouldn't allow a pregnant beta or omega to have an abortion. I forced a bitter smile, no longer having the courage to watch their engagement ceremony. Instead, as the master of ceremonies shouted the couple may now kiss, and the crowd roared, I turned and walked away from the crowd. On the way home, I took out the last $5 I had and went into a store to buy a small knife. I locked the door. I sterilized it with alcohol. On the nightstand was a bowl of sugared eggs that I had made especially for myself. I picked up the knife and, gritting my teeth against the pain, began to remove my own gland. As Adrian wished, I didn't keep the child. It hurt so much. I closed my eyes, the pain so intense I couldn't breathe. Blood gushed from the back of my neck. I could feel my body temperature slowly dropping. With the last ounce of my strength, I tried to reach for the bowl beside me. But the next second, my hand lost its strength, and I knocked over the sugared eggs. The sweet, metallic-smelling liquid spread across the small space. I dipped my finger in the gritty mixture and brought it to my lips. So sweet, my consciousness began to fade. In the last second before I passed out, I remembered Adrian's tense jawline, the flicker of disgust in his eyes. I'm sorry, I whispered in my heart. I'm sorry, I didn't betray you. Then I closed my eyes. I felt an indescribable lightness all over my body. The first ray of morning sun shone through a cracked corner of the window, falling on my ashen eyelids. I floated in mid-air. I saw a faint light slowly emerge from my abdomen. It lingered, touching my cold body as if in farewell. Finally, it faded, dissipating along with the motes of light floating in the air.
He whispered, I'm sorry, Bobby.
Don't be afraid. Daddy will come find you soon. In the next life, I'll protect you properly. But then I realized I couldn't leave. A faint red thread on my hand guided me to a mansion. By the time I arrived, it was completely dark. The path inside the mansion was lined with lights, but Adrian stood outside their glow, his silhouette blurry. His expression was grim, his thin lips pressed into a straight line. The glowing red tip of his cigarette nearly burned his fingers, but he didn't notice. Suddenly, Adrian's dark gaze fell on me. Adrian, it's so late. Aren't you coming in? I turned around. Evan was dressed in loungewear, shivering slightly as if from the cold. So this was where they lived. Adrian didn't look at him, simply saying, Yeah, I know. You go in first. Evan was a little annoyed and couldn't help but complain. Who are you waiting for? The alpha's eyelids fluttered. The cold aura he exuded made Evan feel like he was making a fool of himself. The atmosphere was a bit stiff. Finally, the flashing lights of a car in the distance broke the silence. Ryan was the first to get out of the passenger seat. When I saw who was following him, my pupils widened. Adrian, I brought her just like you asked. Ryan gestured with his head, not forgetting to greet Evan. Hey, Evan. I stared at the mother I hadn't seen in so long, then at Adrian, who hadn't said a word from the beginning. His face was cold, his gaze dark as it fell on the seemingly kind woman. Sharon was trembling, her head bowed ever since she got out of the car. After a long silence, the alpha's hoarse voice spoke. I'll ask you one more time. Where is Leo? At his words, my mother's eyes darted around, and her lips moved, but no sound came out. Speak. Ryan clicked his tongue, his voice laced with threat. I haven't seen him. We haven't been in touch for a long time. Isn't he with you guys? Adrian's breath hitched. The blood vessels in his eyes were terrifyingly red. The next moment, the man's powerful alpha pheromones pressed down, causing everyone present to grimace in pain. Tell me the truth. The woman, already scared out of her wits, immediately dropped to her knees in submission, her voice trembling with fear. I'm not lying. I can't contact him either. That kid, who knows where he's run off to with the money. I took my son and left a long time ago. Still lying. Adrian lunged forward and grabbed the woman's jaw, his eyes boring into her terrified face. The money for Sam was sent to your bank account. How would he have any money? Adrian let go, his rarely angered face growing even darker. He nodded at Ryan. Take her away. Get the truth out of her. Hearing the woman's screams, Evan wrung his hands anxiously. He tried to take the alpha's dangling hand but was stopped by a single look from the man. Perhaps out of frustration, he stomped his foot, bit his lip, and turned to go back into the mansion. I zoned out for a second. After thinking about it, I followed behind Adrian, watching the hem of his coat flutter in the evening wind. The mansion was huge. Adrian walked without stopping, went up the stairs, and turned left into the study. Only then did I realize that he and Evan didn't share a room. This study was entirely in Adrian's style. Cold, dull, and impersonal. Adrian didn't turn on the light, just stood there in the darkness. Ring, ring. A sudden phone call caught his attention. My eyes slowly shifted. In my peripheral vision, I saw Adrian stiffen for a moment before picking up the receiver. Mr. Ashworth, we found him. It was too dark. I couldn't see the man's expression. I had to get closer, hovering behind him to overhear their conversation. Adrian listlessly pressed his forehead against the desk, his breathing a little too fast. Where is he? A second. 2 seconds. Adrian froze. Suddenly, a helpless, suppressed sob came from the study. Evan stood on the landing, hearing that desperate sound, but didn't dare to go any closer. I listened to the hesitant voice on the other end of the line. When we found him, Mr. Chun wasn't breathing anymore. There was blood everywhere. We think he might have been trying to remove his gland. On the table, there was a pregnancy report. It shows he was 2 months pregnant. We'll know more after the autopsy. The day of the funeral, very few people came. A dozen bodyguards surrounded the cemetery, keeping a tight watch. Adrian looked at the young man on the tombstone and said with a faint smile, "I was too late, wasn't I?" He stood there silently. After a moment, he bent down and gently placed a bouquet of flowers in front of the headstone. In front of him were two graves, one large and one small. I looked at the picture of my own young, shy face. I suddenly felt a wave of emotion. The photo I had specifically taken at a studio on my presentation day. I never thought it would be the last image of me left in this world. Adrian's Adam's apple bobbed. The hand at his side slowly clenched into a fist, all his pain swallowed into his palm.
Leo, I'm sorry.
"I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner." The grass and trees swayed in the wind. The birds in the woods seemed to sense something. When the gunshot rang out, they fluttered their wings and cried out in alarm. Winter was coming. They gathered in flocks, ready to fly to the warm south. When spring returned next year, there would be new hope.